Hello and welcome to Spark Joy Astrology. My name is Joy and I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much for tuning in to hear about this Gemini full moon. It is a rather hot and fiery one, so I'm glad you're here so you can get some intel on how to move through these rather intense energies with a bit more grace. This particular full moon in Gemini is exact on November 27th, that's Monday, at 2:16 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. This particular lunation is the first full moon that we have after eclipse season and a very potent Scorpio season where we did have the Sun and Mars come together in a Cazimi in Scorpio. Mars is home in Scorpio, so we had a rebirth around Martian topics in our lives. These are things around our goals, our ambition, the driving energy within us, that sunshine, that vitality that moves us towards where we want to go in life. This energy can also be one that is aggressive, hot-tempered, and inflamed because the warrior has to be that, right? To be able to charge forward in war. Mars carries a sword, so the potential to cut out things that do not serve us in our lives is possible, as well as maybe with a hot temper, severing things that maybe we didn't actually want to cut out. So this lunation, when it comes to two simple words, it's react versus respond. How are you going to move gracefully into the place of respond rather than hot temperly responding with a reactive response? So let's dive into why this is so fiery. First of all, as of yesterday, November 25th, that was Saturday, we had the exact square of Mars and Saturn. Mars and the Sun have been moving hand in hand since that Cazimi and moved into Sagittarius, the Sun a few days ago and Mars on the 25th. When Mars moved into this potent place of 0 degrees, he made the exact square to Saturn in Pisces at 0 degrees. Saturn recently went direct, but has been hanging out at 0 degrees for weeks now, friends, very slowly moving. So Mars got that rebirth energy to charge forward, but Saturn, who's moving so slow, is making everything feel like we're not moving at all. Like we are so slowly moving. And this is really asking us to stand in our power. Slowing us down with this yes is really asking us, is this right for us? Do you really want it? Are you willing to do the work, right? Saturn's about doing the work, the responsibility that it takes to do the work, the authority, the self-discipline that it takes to get there. So Saturn and Mars, well, this square is a hard one. These are the two malefics of the cosmos. Mars and Saturn bring in challenge and strife. So when they are connected with a square, which is by the nature of Mars, there's some tension to work out. Tension around discipline, around anger, around the desire to move forward but feeling slowed down are definitely a part of this lunation. When Mars and Saturn come together in a square, we can want to rip our hair out. We can easily respond to authority in a hot-tempered way. And what is very interesting about this is that Saturn is making an opposition to Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is opposite the house of Pisces in Virgo at 6 degrees. So it is a 6-degree orb, so not a super tight orb. I tend to use a 3-degree orb, but they are definitely talking to one another. And these two energies are rather opposite, but they're asking us to see where old structures of authority are keeping us suppressed. Black Moon Lilith has us look at where our energy is being held down and where we feel like we need to bust out of cages and become more authentically ourselves. She is asking us to honor our feelings with this particular opposition to Saturn, to face fears, to face where we're being held down and constricted and restricted at, and to passionately realize our true authentic desire, right? Mars is like, let's go with that desire. But Saturn is saying, well, slow down. We really need to figure out if this is right. Do you really want to do this? What is interesting, friends, is that Black Moon Lilith over there in Pisces or rather in Virgo, opposite Pisces, is also making a square to the moon and the sun. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this opposition of the moon and the sun. Every full moon is exactly that, an opposition. It is where the sun's rays can fully shine into the moon and illuminate this house, wherever the moon is. And the moon is hanging out in Gemini. So this Gemini full moon is, simply put, about communication. Gemini is the house of analyzing information, taking in information, communicating that information, and really, the gossipy house of intellectual banter. So how are we communicating around these ideals of up-leveling from repressed places and into more authentic versions of ourselves, charging forward into these new goals that we all have been working with? This particular full moon is actually a culmination point, as full moons are, from the new moon that was in Gemini back in the summer. Mid-June, it was June 17th or 18th, depending on your time zone. So looking back to that time, what intention seeds did you plant, and what is coming into fruition at this particular time, as we have been given this rebirth energy with our Martian selves, that archetype within us that is about charging forward, friends, into goals, into our ambitions. Okay, so the Grand Cross, I've already, laid the scene a little bit here with the opposition of the new moon, or moon and sun. The sun is in Sagittarius. This is the house of exuberant, expansive belief systems, of play. We have a lot of athletic energy that comes into play when the sun is hanging out in Sagittarius. But this opposition of the sun and the moon is a cross point. There is another opposition, creating a perfect cross in the cosmos between Saturn and Black Moon Lilith, the moon and the sun. And these oppositions are being anchored in by squares. On either side of those oppositions, we have these 4 anchor points 90 degrees apart from one another. This is an aspect that is called a square, and it is by the nature of Mars. So Mars is a really important character in this lunation because Mars is holding hands with the sun as well. The sun is at 4 degrees of Sagittarius, and Mars is at 2 degrees of Sagittarius. We also have Mercury in the house of Sagittarius at 24 degrees. So these characters, right, in Sagittarius, and then we have the moon in Gemini, Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, and Saturn in Pisces, are creating this Grand Cross, is what it's called, which is a tense aspect, asking us to work through challenges to up-level. The 4 houses that I just said are all mutable houses. If you have any natal planets in these homes, you are most definitely being affected by this full moon more intensely. But these are all mutable, and mutable means adaptable. So although we are working with a lot of squares and a hard Grand Cross and 2 oppositions, we have the ability to flow into adapting. Adapting is the name of the game. We can work out of this rigidity and into more flowing energy. So that's a beautiful thing. Grand Crosses are challenging, but when they're in mutable homes, we are offered up a little bit more ease in that Grand Cross intensity. All right, so honoring our feelings, knowing our worth, taking optimistic action and seeking connection and conversation, clarity around our feelings as we do want to move forward with our ambitions. That is really summarizing the Grand Cross energy that we're working with. There are 4 squares, right? That's intense, but we have one more square to add to this lunation, and that is coming from Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of this lunation because he is hosting the moon in his house of Gemini. So we really want to look at Mercury. He's an important character. We also want to look at Jupiter because the sun in Sagittarius is being hosted by Jupiter since he rules that house. What is also very interesting, friends, is that Jupiter rules Pisces and Mercury rules Virgo. So the Grand Cross is being hosted by these ruling planets, these co-rulers to this lunation. So very intense energy when it comes to, an exact type of energy. It's less scattered. It's very focused with Jupiter and Mercury really, hosting the party, if you will. But what is beautiful is that Venus is also very much a part of this. We'll get deeper into that after we talk about Mercury, though. So backing up, Mercury, this character of communication, he is opposite his home sign, right? As he's in Sagittarius, opposite Gemini, where the moon is, meaning that he is debilitated. His ability to communicate is a little less awesome. When a planet is opposite its home sign, it feels a little uncomfortable, like it doesn't quite know how to operate. And Sagittarius is about expansive energy, it's belief systems, it's how the universe works. Gemini is about getting into the nitty-gritty details and analyzing things. So he feels a little uncomfortable here in this expansive energy. So that's kind of a, challenge that we're working with. How do we have these potent conversations? How do we work from grace to respond rather than find fiery, hot-tempered reactions happening? We have a little bit of a handicap here with our Mercury in a debilitated house. Mercury is also making another square. Here's that 5th one. And this is an exact square to Neptune in Pisces at 24 degrees. So here's Pisces, also having another aspect drawing us to this house. So Pisces is an important house here. It is about spirituality. It's about getting into the nebulous areas of our lives that are non-physical, our intuition, our emotions, this feminine realm, if you will. And with Mars, and the sun making that square to Saturn, we can really work into resentment feelings, self-sacrificial types of feelings. So if you are feeling these, it is a beautiful time to actually have conversations. The challenging part, though, is that Mercury, our communicative archetypal character, is making this square to Neptune, and that can bring in some confusion, some fogginess, some debilitated ways of deciphering information. Is this real? Is this not real? Am I really feeling this? Or is it something I'm making up in my head? There can be definitely some murkiness when it comes to knowing exactly how to communicate. So it's a wonderful energy, though, to tune into our higher selves, to tune into our intuition. So before having any conversations that you may be pulled towards having, make sure you take a moment to meditate, to take deep breaths, to check in with your intuition, and to really work through the possible fogginess that this square between Neptune and Mercury could be bringing in. Mercury is also making a couple awesome aspects. One is a trine, and that is to the North Node in Aries. And this is another exact aspect. The North Node is at 24 degrees of Aries, and this is the point of destiny. This is the point of our purpose in life. And it's not always an easy energy because it's something that we're not familiar with. The North Node is like this new experience for us to work towards. But Mercury having a beautiful trine, this is flowing, expansive energy. It is by the nature of Jupiter, so expanding our belief systems. How are we able to communicate this expansion through this beautiful trine towards our goals and our life purpose and path? The challenging part, though, friends, is that the North Node is conjunct asteroid Eris. Eris was the goddess of discord and strife, and the North Node and Eris have been traveling together for months now and will continue to do so into 2024, meaning that, you know, life on this planet is filled with strife and discord, and it sure as heck is, friends. So knowing that we have this beautiful trine, though, we are given this ability to see that yes from the universe, that go for what you want, right? The rebirth of Mars, that ambition, it's time. We can do it, but there's definitely some strife to get there. The energy of Eris will dissipate and not be in conjunct with the North Node, I believe, in February. So a little bit more of a green light once we get into that month. But wow, that is some fun Mercury energy there. We also have Mercury making a sextile to Venus. So I mentioned that Venus was a part of this lunation, and here's where it comes in. Venus is making an aspect which is by the nature of herself. Sextiles are Venusian, and that means that they're working towards harmonizing, towards bringing in balance, and especially around relationships and finances. So Mercury having this sextile to Venus in the house of Libra is important because Venus is home. She is in her home sign where she has been able to really fully feel herself, this new version of herself, since we've gone through this self-love revolution this summer as Venus worked through a retrograde in Leo and made multiple aspects to Uranus, the shaker-upper, the revolutionizer energy. And so Venus here in her home sign is expressing herself. And as she is moving from this 21st degree, where she is in Libra on the full moon, she's moving towards the South Node. So I mentioned the North Node is in Aries at 24 degrees, and the South Node is directly opposite. And that means that the South Node is at 24 degrees of Libra. Venus is in a 3-degree orb, meaning we're feeling it, friends. There is a releasing, a letting go. The North Node is that place of going towards this new point of destiny. Well, the South Node is where we've spiritualized lessons. We've really dealt with this energy before, and we're ready to expand into a new layer. And through expansion, we need to let something die, right? We learned that intensely during Scorpio season. But what are we letting go of when it comes to Venus? These are themes around relationships. We might be ending relationships, karmic relationships. We might be ending jobs, the way that we make money. Perhaps we are feeling a new invigoration around creative endeavors as we let go of maybe ways that have held us back towards moving into these more feminine, creative places. So the South Node represents a point of letting go. And Venus moving towards this is pretty intense energy. Venus does come into a conjunction with the South Node once a year, but in the sign of Libra, it only happens every 12 years. So you really do want to look at your own natal chart and see where the house of Libra is in your chart and really hone in on those themes of what you're letting go there. Oh, I hear my tiny human coming. No, Daddy's not here. It's just us. I'm still shooting my video though, love. Thank you. I have a 3-year-old who turns 4 on December 3rd, and she is finally allowing me to record videos where before this never happened. So it's exciting to see. My ambition in life is to be a full-time astrologer. I'm letting go of my old job that I've been at for almost 21 years. And I'm seeing all these little things like her allowing me to actually make the time to do this happening. So there's just a little example from my own life. But Yeah, so Venus is definitely a part of this player, and a lovely little bonus tidbit to this lunation, this full moon, is that Libra is actually the constellation on the horizon when the full moon is exact. So Libra is being highlighted, and that's why I really wanted to say, hey, Venus is important here, friends. And what's really interesting about this is that Venus, or rather the ascendant line or the degree that is on the horizon at the exact moment of the full moon, is at 7 degrees. And Jupiter is over in Venus's home sign, her other home sign, Taurus, where Jupiter is moving retrograde backwards at 7 degrees. So there is this tie from the Libra house over to Venus's other house, to Jupiter. Jupiter, as I said earlier, is the co-ruler of this lunation. So we want to look at Jupiter, what's happening to Jupiter, because Jupiter is important. Going retrograde, this means we are working with revisiting, revamping, redoing our belief systems around Taurian topics. So the way that we find security in life through exploring our own bodies, sensuality, through finances, through having, a solid, safe home and finances. These sort of things are being activated by Jupiter going retrograde. We're having this internal dialogue around these sort of topics. So Jupiter is also making 2 minor aspects to the moon and down to the house of Sagittarius. So in regards to the moon, Jupiter is making a semi-sextile. This is a aspect that brings in subtle positivity, but it's very hard to get it. You actually have to work for it. There are some adjustments that need to be made. And the same thing is happening with the quincunx to Jupiter and the full moon. This is where we're asked to again, we're having some blind spots. So there's adjustments that need to be made. We need to be able to step back and take time, right, with this retrograde energy to really know that it's not quite time to make the moves yet. Although we have this rebirth of Mars, there's a lot of things telling us to slow down, to take deep breaths, to strategize, to plan things out a little bit more before we really drive forward with the energy. We have to make these subtle adjustments around, these Venusian themes, how we're making money, how we're doing relationships, how we are expressing ourselves, beautiful things as well as creative things, all of these sorts of topics. So, well, let's see. I think that is most of what I wanted to speak about, friends. But it is definitely a challenging lunation, presenting a lot of challenges, conflicts, problems, asking us to find solutions through middle ground, through having important conversations, by first grounding ourselves into, a place of grace, where we can respond with love, where we can move forward with passion and have these conversations that are very important right now. Black Moon Lilith was a huge part of Venus's retrograde. So this big energy of breaking out of old ways of doing things, old structures, the way, we earn money, the way that we do relationships has been revamped. And Black Moon Lilith in Virgo is most definitely a big part of asking us to find our authentic selves. That means a lot of change is happening. And that means that we need to move with grace, because change is hard, but it is so much the only constant on this planet. Passions and tempers, motivation, all of these things are highly charged in our bodies right now. But with all the Saturn energy, there is a slowing down, a dampening of that wild child fun that we're feeling bubbling within us with Black Moon Lilith. All right, friends, that is all I have as far as the actual lunation. I did want to end with one more little bonus about Mercury. Because he is the ruler of where the moon is, we need to touch on the fact that Mercury just entered pre-shadow phase. Pre-shadow phase is the phase before a retrograde happens. So on November 25th, Mercury started this pre-shadow phase at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. From November 25th until December 13th, Mercury is slowing down, moving through these degrees of 22 Sag to 8 degrees of Capricorn. If you have any natal planets in those degree ranges, you are going to be affected intensely by this Mercury retrograde. From November 25th to December 13th, you want to pay attention what comes up in your life around communication, because these themes are going to be revisited, revamped, and reworked during the retrograde that begins on December 13th, and Mercury will move all the way back down to 22 degrees of Sagittarius. During that time, we will be revamping and really looking more inward with those experiences that came up during the pre-shadow phase. Once Mercury goes direct on January 2nd, then we start to work with those lessons externally. We start to have the conversations that we've been thinking about and, reworking in our mind. And that happens from January 2nd until February 11th as Mercury moves through the post-shadow phase. So, wow, that is a very important tidbit to realize, that our ruler of this lunation has started to slow down. And so be, a self-study, svadhyaya, looking at your life. What is coming up between now and December 13th to rework, to revamp, during the early parts of 2024. All right, friends, I'm going to leave you with one final little tidbit, and that is a breath. With all of this fiery energy, with the 5 squares and Mars holding hands with the sun, I want to leave you with a fire breath. As a yoga instructor, my favorite thing in the world to do is to teach classes based on astrology. I call it flowing with the cosmos. And since I can't actually teach you the sequence this last week that we really flowed with this potent energy, I will leave you with a breath that invokes that Martian fire within. And it is called the Kalabati breath, or the breath of fire, or the breath of bellows. So if you think of your belly as these bellows that can ignite the internal fire within, we are going to use those bellows to find the Kalabati breath. So it's a quick inhale and a quick exhale through the nose. And this is a breath that you can bring in whenever you're feeling frustrated, hot-tempered, to really bring that energy back into your energetic system and allow Mars to heat you up from the inside, rather than have the external experience heat you up. So sit down, find a grounded space with your tailbone pushing into either the earth or a chair. Tuck your chin slightly and take a moment just to breathe along your spine. Feel the channel of energy known as your Sushumna flowing with your inhale and exhale. And then you're gonna close your mouth and let your breath come in and out of your nose in quick, rapid formation. You'll see my belly moving quickly, and it goes like this, friends. And then taking a long breath in and an open mouth exhale, and taking 2 more of those cleansing breaths. That is the tool I want to leave you with as we work into this fiery lunation. Remember, friends, work to respond with grace rather than react with fire. I love you so much, and thank you for tuning in. I'll see you for the new moon in a couple weeks. Mwah.